On the left, this is a televangelist extremist named John MacArthur. He's been in the industry since the 1960s at least. He had a radio show all the way back then. His dad was in it before him. He's been involved in extremist evangelicalism and televangelism his entire life. And on the right, we have a young Gavin Newsom, surprisingly, governor of California now. At the time, I think he was just elected as mayor of San Francisco or something like that. He addresses it. And this is a debate that they had on Larry King Live in 2004 about gay marriage and how they feel about it. Now, for a little bit of context, at the time, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Obama, almost nobody supported gay marriage. It was an extremely unpopular position to hold in 2004, even for people on the left. So the fact that Gavin Newsom, argued for it in the first place is kind of impressive to me, honestly. But, of course, we have a televangelist here to argue against it. So the reason it was coming up at the time is because George Bush, this guy right here on screen, George Bush was trying to push a constitutional amendment to make it illegal to allow gay marriage, basically, at any point ever. Obviously, that didn't work, and we ended up with gay marriage, ultimately. But I wanted to listen to the debate that these two guys had between each other, because it was actually really fascinating. So let's get into it, give this a listen, and while we listen to this, we're going to play some Breath of the Wild, too. I'm just kind of going around collecting Korok seeds and stuff. All right, let's give this a listen.
Today I call upon the Congress to promptly pass and to send to the states for ratification an amendment to our Constitution defining and protecting marriage as the union of a man and woman as husband and wife.
Yeah, nobody ever had a problem with men and women getting married. That's the thing. We also want other people to be allowed to get married, too. So this isn't protecting a union. It's just as protected as it's ever been. It's just allowing others to get married also. That's all. Notice how they propagandize and twist it around. George Bush was actually, surprisingly, really good at propagandizing. He had low support for the Iraq War. So you know what he did? He spread around this meme, support the troops. You must support the troops. If you don't support the troops, then you are a traitor to the U.S. government, basically. That's what he said. Everybody's running around saying support the troops. It's bringing people closer to the center. It's an argument that nobody can plausibly disagree with without getting yelled at by everybody. People on the left, the right, and the center. That's how he spread his propaganda. He was a master propagandist in his own right. George Bush was.
Tonight, the president comes out hard against same-sex marriage, and emotions are rising as the debate heats up. With us tonight, San Francisco Mayor Gavin Newsom. He brought this issue center stage earlier this month when he ordered the city and county to issue same-sex marriage licenses. Nationally syndicated Christian broadcaster, Pastor John MacArthur of California's Grace Community Church. Chad Allen, the actor and producer who starred in TV hits like My Two Dads and Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, became an activist after he was outed by tabloids in 1996. And Representative Marilyn Musgrave, Republican of Colorado. The White House says the president approves of the broad principles in the federal marriage amendment. That's an amendment she introduced in the House. They're all next on Larry King Live.
Wow, this is old, dude. 2004. This is such a dated TV show. Okay, let's jump forward. Here we go.
Two quick notes. The Democratic presidential debate will take place here on this at this time slot. Thursday night, I'll be the moderator. It'll come from the University of Southern California, co-sponsored by CNN and the Los Angeles Times. It'll be 90 minutes. And tomorrow night's a special hour with phone calls for Sarah Jessica Parker of Sex and the City. Let's begin our go-round here with Mayor Newsom. How did you react, Mayor, to today's announcement by the president?
His announcement that he's trying to push a new constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage forever.
I was disappointed, but I confess, Larry, I wasn't surprised. Frankly, the president's been talking about this for some time. He certainly raised it in terms of a national priority in his State of the Union. I unfortunately, though, feel it's divisive, inappropriate, and frankly, I feel it's shameful to divide this country like this at a time when we need to unite this country. And I find it unfortunate the president decided to make this such a political priority.
Were you challenging, Mayor, the wishes of the people of California?
No, I was actually upholding my constitutional oath to bear full faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the State of California. And Larry, nowhere in that Constitution does it allow me to discriminate against people. And what we were doing previous to our directive was, I believe, discriminating against people. And I find that abhorrent, and I find that inappropriate. And we wanted to stand up on principle, stand up on the constitutional footing, and we made the appropriate action. Now 3,300 plus couples have affirmed their love, and in turn, Larry, I believe my marriage has been affirmed.
That's really interesting. Now, Gavin Newsom was straight, of course. It is straight, I believe. And the argument against gay marriage at the time was, if you allow gay marriage to pass, then people getting gay married invalidates their, straight people's marriage, basically. It invalidates straight marriage. Absurd. But he's cutting that argument off at the pass and saying it affirms my straight marriage.
Do you still issue licenses?
We're still issuing licenses. Today we issued another 70 to 80 licenses. We have people coming from all over the world, from every part of the United States of America, and it is just exhilarating to see the love and the bond and the commitment of faith and understanding the responsibilities and obligations of marriage that are being executed every single day down at City Hall.
Where do we stand in the courts, Mayor?
Well, we're waiting to see what happens this Friday. The Attorney General of the State of California desires this to go to the California Supreme Court. We've 3 times been in court. 3 times we've been successful. 2 different judges in those 3 separate hearings have said no irreparable harm is being done. The legal process is working. Frankly, the whole process, as it was conceived of, has been set up and is working as we speak. And we look forward to making strong arguments later in the next court series.
That's really interesting. Again, I think he's a newly minted politician. He had, just become the mayor of San Francisco. So going on this TV show, and this is kind of his way of making himself known and setting his virtue signaling, but in a good way, signaling the things that he stands for, basically. So he controversially, at the time, allowed people in San Francisco, in his city, to get married, gay people to get married. And people were mad. I don't know how else to say it. It was bad. They lost their minds over it because they were invalidated or because whatever. It was just garbage.
John MacArthur, what is the irreparable harm of gays being married?
Well, I think there are a number of things that we need to talk about. One is it would destroy the family.
It would destroy the family. Okay. He's sitting next to a gay guy, by the way, saying this. How would it destroy the family for other people to get married if they wanted? That makes no sense at all.
I mean, obviously, God designed the family to be a man and a woman to produce a child. It is the DNA. It's the genetic structure of civilization.
Okay, interesting. For the record, people wonder why homosexuality, evolved in the first place. And I have to admit, I was curious. So I looked into it a little bit. And from what I can tell, it evolved in human culture because some parents died. Some parents didn't want a kid, gave up on the kid. Whatever. There were extra kids in society, right? And nobody to take care of them. Being gay basically evolved as a method of society helping the population. That's how it benefited the population. Gay couples like adopting children. They have the opportunity to adopt children. That's why it was socially beneficial, evolutionarily beneficial for gay people to exist.
don't have that, you don't have civilization, so you're striking it at the very core of its existence.
But what does the state have to do with that? God can do it, and as a religious person, you can practice it, but why should the state be involved in a marriage?
Exactly. Why do you care? It doesn't matter. Look, you don't want to allow marriage in your church, whatever. Why are you trying to impose your beliefs on people, on the state, on everybody around you? That's what he's doing, right? That's a good point, Larry. Thank you.
Well, typically the state has always been involved in a marriage, and I think that because the state's responsibility is to uphold what is right, to uphold righteousness.
No, it's not. The state is not supposed to legislate morality at all. The state is supposed to protect your rights. That's it. It's supposed to prevent people from violating your rights. That's pretty much the extent of it. Your right to swing your fist ends at the tip of my nose. You can swing it anywhere you want except for right here. It's the state's responsibility to ensure that my rights are not being violated, that somebody isn't coming in and trampling all over them. That's the basic idea behind our entire social contract. The state has a responsibility to make sure that nobody is violating my rights. And that's it. They don't have, there's no place for the state to do anything beyond that. You know, not too long ago, there was a letter that was sent around to, like, my apartment complex, basically saying somebody was smoking in the building, and that was bothering somebody else in their apartment, apparently. And I got to thinking to myself, like, is it legal for them to ban people from smoking in their own house? Here's the social contract theory answer to this. If the smoke is bothering somebody else, you have to find a different way of doing this. You have to go out on your balcony or something. You can't, you are interfering with somebody else's life. You are you're punching them in the nose. You're stepping on their right to sit in their home and peacefully enjoy a quiet evening without having cigarette smoke bother them, basically. Despite the fact that it's in your house and you're doing it in your own vicinity, you are bothering other people. So the state has a responsibility to protect those people's rights. You have to go out on the balcony and do it instead of, like, right next to whatever, right next to your door. That's the general idea behind the social contract that we share. Nothing in there, if you notice, has any mention of upholding moral rights or righteousness or any of that. There's nothing moral about any of it. The state does not have a responsibility to uphold moral rights or moral beliefs or whatever.
And it's in the fabric of human thinking to understand a man and a woman make a marriage and a family. God has put that in the very thinking of people. It's in the heart. It's there. The state upholds that standard, always has in every state, in every human history, factor of human history.
Okay, I don't care what they used to do in human history, and that's not necessarily true. There are times when gay people have been more accepted and less accepted in certain areas. I don't care what they used to do or how they used to view it or whatever. I care about now.
Favor civil unions?
Sorry, let me step back.
Factor of human history.
Do you favor civil unions?
You know,
the president said that should be left up to the state.
Gay and lesbian people can do whatever they want.
I'm not sure what the difference between a marriage and a civil union was at the time. The main difference between a civil union and a marriage is that civil unions aren't recognized by the federal government. Since civil unions are only recognized at the state level, they don't offer certain federal protections and benefits. So it's a lower level. It's a lower protection for people. It's not as, you don't gain as much protection. Marriage offers a lot to people, a lot. For example, you can be on your partner's health insurance. What happens if your partner is, they get in a car accident and they're dealing with some serious situation and medical decisions need to be made for them instantly. What happens? What happens if they're on their deathbed in the ICU? You're not allowed back there because you're not family, right? There are a billion good reasons to just allow gay marriage and no good reasons not to.
Gay and lesbian people can do whatever they want. They can do that in this culture or any other culture, but they don't have the right to determine marriage for a whole nation.
So it's the marriage aspect, not this. If a state wants to pass that civil unions are okay to give rights.
We're talking about two things, Larry. We're talking about an issue of civil union. That's a civil issue. If you ask me about whether it's moral or whether it's right, then it becomes a biblical issue.
That might come up later, but
okay. But a civil issue, sure, they have the right to make a relationship if they want.
Chad, why do you want to be married? Why do you want the right to be married?
That's fascinating. So at this time, I guess it was politically advantageous to say that people are allowed to do whatever they want, even though you don't agree with it or whatever. That's really interesting because the real position that this guy, that John MacArthur holds, is he doesn't believe that gay people should exist. He wants to deport them to somewhere else. That's his real position. So backing off of that and backing into the corner of they can do what they want, just not get married because it invalidates my marriage, that's kind of interesting, actually. He brought meth and male prostitution and left a voicemail on the male escort's phone. Oh, my God. He bought meth. You're talking about Ted Haggard? Oh. Emily Siegel, Vermont was the first state to pass civil unions. My dad's store is vandalized because he supported it. Wow, dude. That doesn't surprise me, honestly. Doesn't surprise me. People lost their minds over civil unions, over this issue specifically. It was the moral panic of its day. Now people are doing a moral panic over trans people. Back in the 80s, it was Satanism. Well, back in the 2000s, it was gay marriage. It's going to invalidate my marriage. My marriage will mean less if people get gay married, was what they believed. Honestly sad. And it wasn't just Republicans either. It was a lot of Democrats that believed it. A lot. George W. Bush's first executive order as president created the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives in the White House. I didn't know that. Wow. That's crazy. I had no idea that his first executive order was to push religion on people, and he wrote separation of church and state. Fascinating. Thank you, Emily Siegel. I appreciate the super chat.
Why do you want to be married? Why do you want the right to be married?
So he's asking a gay guy now, why do you want the right to be married?
You know, I'll be honest with you, if you'd asked me this question a year ago, I wouldn't have cared. I said, why do I want to get involved with that institution? Why would I want to ultimately wind up having my things decided by a court and where they go? Mm-hmm. And then I fell in love a year ago. And he's on the road right now. When I wake up in the morning, I miss him a lot. I miss him right in my belly.
Look, I don't care about love, honestly. Like, marriage is not done for love, or it shouldn't be, at least. It's a contract you're signing. And this contract affects your life in so many ways it's obscene. Forget about the tax benefits. What about, if you're on your deathbed or whatever? There are a billion good reasons for this. Marriage is extremely important if you're in a long-term relationship. You should get married to somebody because of the protections and the benefits that it provides.
And for the first time in my life, I started thinking about this institution of marriage and what my parents talked about and about building a life with somebody else. And when I woke up today, the president told me that I couldn't have that. The president said he would turn the Constitution around and make it a document of exclusion and tell me that I'm a second-class citizen. That's not okay.
What's wrong with a civil union where a state says you're entitled to all the benefits of marriage, you're just not married?
From my understanding, you don't get all of the benefits. That's kind of the problem. You get some of the benefits of marriage, but not on a federal level.
The bottom line on that, for me, is we had that debate in this country. We already decided as a country that separate but equal was not good enough for us.
Absolutely agreed. Wow, that's a really good point. I love the way that he's attacking this. Separate but equal is not good enough for us. 100%.
If that's the case, then it's time that we all stood up and again proclaimed that separate but equal is not good enough for us. And in this case, thank you very much. I appreciate that you're finally going to tell me that it's okay. I can have those same legal benefits that you've allowed everybody else who wants to declare their love. But then you want to tell me that I'm second class because I can't call it marriage? That's not good enough for me.
I totally agree. Even if you did have all of the benefits of a marriage in a civil union, which you don't, but even if you did, you should still allow people to get married if they're gay. Separate but equal is not good enough. If you're unfamiliar with the term, it was used back in the, 1940s or something. There's a court case that basically determined that segregation was legal. You know, it may have been a lot longer ago than the 40s. It may have been back in the 1800s. I don't remember. Anyways, they determined that segregation was legal and fine as long as the water fountains or the bathrooms or the schools or whatever were maintained to roughly the same standard as the white bathrooms were. Maintained. So that doesn't mean that they're legally required to give them the same education. It just means they have to keep the halls just as clean. And just as he said, separate but equal isn't good enough. We shouldn't have second-class citizens in this society, period. There's no excuse for this. Everybody should be an equal with each other.
Congresswoman Musgrave, what do you have against Chad Allen expressing that love with his partner in marriage?
I actually have no opinion on that. What I do have
I bet. No opinion on that, huh? Now she's going to give us her opinion on it.
an opinion on is whether or not in this country we will allow activist judges to redefine marriage. You know, Chad needs to be aware that the deliberative process, the legislative process, has been available all along for people to change laws, but they've not chosen to go that way, but rather to go through the judicial branch, activist judges, to get their way. And
oh, so it's not okay for the Supreme Court to exist? Is that what you're trying to tell me? You don't want the Supreme Court to make decisions on anything ever again? Am I picking this up correctly? What if the Supreme Court is making a decision on Roe v. Wade? Are you okay with it then? Are you only okay with it if it works to your benefit? They don't even realize how hypocritical they are, do they? These people. It seems to me that she probably has no idea how hypocritical she's being. Well, maybe she does. Maybe she's setting out to be like that. Maybe she just likes it. I don't know. Depraved shit, man.
the American people should not be forced to recognize gay marriage by...
Yeah, you're being forced to recognize gay marriage. How wrong is that? You see what, like, the propaganda technique she's using here, right? Earlier I talked about your right to swing your fist ends at the tip of my nose, right? The Republican Party at the time knew if they wanted to convince moderates that gay marriage was wrong, they had to take that tack. They had to take that position. They had to convince people that their rights are being violated. Because by and large, in the country, if your rights aren't being violated, you don't care. For the most part, people don't care what others do. Largely in the U.S., moderates and people on the left don't care. The only people that care about what others do are the Republican Party through their moral panics and their outrage. So they have to take a position that affirms that your rights are being taken away. And what's the position? How did they argue that in this case? They said they're redefining marriage for you, which invalidates the legitimacy of your marriage. They had to find some way to flip it around so that you were being punched in the nose by this decision. Even though that's completely absurd.
Federal judges or state judges.
But Congresswoman, hasn't it been true in the past? There's only two ways to change a law, legislatively or breaking it and then having a judge deciding or a constitutional Supreme Court deciding. Martin Luther King broke many laws.
Yeah, that's how our system works, is by breaking laws and then challenging those laws and going all the way up the chain. She's saying you shouldn't do that, apparently, but she's perfectly fine with it with Roe v. Wade.
On the way to justice. So what is open to someone other than to challenge a law? If the legislature doesn't change it, than to challenge it legally?
Well, what is open to them is the legislative deliberative process. If we're ever to change the definition of marriage in this country, it should be done by the American people and their elected representatives. And they've had every opportunity to go that route, but have chosen.
Well, that's interesting. I disagree when it comes to people's rights. I think that she's saying that the Supreme Court should not rule on things at all, I guess, right? I mean, she's saying that Supreme Court existing at all is evil. That's what she seems to be saying. If you want something changed in society, then you should do it through legislators. You should, get the bill passed through the House and then go to the Senate. Should be signed by the Senate and then signed by the president and so on and so forth. So the Supreme Court just doesn't fit into this equation anywhere, apparently. What a weird position to take. She doesn't take that position on literally anything else. It's only on this one issue.
And they've had every opportunity to go that route, but have chosen not to do that because the American people overwhelmingly support the traditional definition of marriage.
Simply untrue. The American people overwhelmingly, at the time even, I think, supported people's right to do what they want. It was a kind of a culture war issue of the time.
Union between one man and one woman.
States in the South historically supported a separation of color in the South, and Martin Luther King challenged that. Many states held to it. A black couldn't marry a white in the southern states. It was easily 20 years ago.
That's really on point. Exactly. 20 years before this, 1984, blacks couldn't marry whites, or it was at least frowned upon heavily at the time. Because this is 2004. 1984, people, black and white, could not marry. And that changed. How is that a different issue than this? They're exactly the same issue.
Couldn't happen.
What we're talking about here, Larry, is the definition of marriage. Changing the definition of marriage. And again, if that's to be done,
You're not changing the definition of marriage. What are you even talking about?
Be done by the American people and their elected representatives.
Okay. Mayor, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with letting the people decide?
Yeah, Larry, I feel honestly when I'm listening to the Congresswoman, and I say this with respect, if we wait for popularity polls in the people, we still would be talking about interracial marriages in this country. The year
Absolutely.
I was born, finally it was some activist judges in Loving versus the state of Virginia that finally recognized that 16 states were being discriminatory and not affording the rights of blacks to marry whites, whites to marry Asians, etc. The point is there's certain principles you stand on, and those principles of non-discrimination. I've got to say as well, I think we're affirming family. And I would challenge anyone that doesn't think that gay couples are an extension of a fabric of family to come to City Hall and see young kids, to see mothers and fathers with their sons and daughters that are engaging in bonds and extending themselves to loving relationships.
Absolutely, yeah. Gay families are just as loving and just as close and real as straight families in every way.
And affirming marriage. And as I said, Larry, I got married 2 years ago. I have certain rights and privileges that until we took action here in San Francisco were denied literally millions of people across this country. That is fundamentally flawed, and I would argue that's not American.
Yeah, I agree that America is based on your right to do whatever you want with your life. You are free to live your life however you want to live it. That's the idea. That's how it should be anyways. That's how the idea should be expressed. But, these, honestly, Trumpers of their day were against freedom, honestly. They were against people making decisions for themselves freely.
We get a
It
break
might
and we'll
be
come back.
interesting.
I'll let Marilyn respond, and,
Okay.
and John MacArthur will get into it. We've got a full hour. We'll also be including your phone calls. Don't go away.
After more than 2 centuries of American jurisprudence and millennia of human experience, a few judges and local authorities are presuming to change the most fundamental institution of civilization.
Wow, it's a civilizational thing. It's a danger. If you allow people to get married to each other, it's going to change society forever. How terrible. Of course, I think in 2015, maybe, it was legalized by the Supreme Court across the board. And, you know, surprisingly, civilization didn't come to an end. Who would have thought?
Their actions have created confusion on an issue that requires clarity.
When did you know that you liked the same sex?
Well, I was a non-sexually active teenager, and any
Oh, it's Rosie O'Donnell. Apparently, Rosie O'Donnell watches David Pakman. She's actually pretty cool,
capacity.
apparently.
You know, I was very popular in high school. I was the homecoming queen. I was senior class president. You know, I was not at all thinking of dating in any way, shape, or form. And it wasn't as though I thought, wow, I might be gay. I'd better, you know, try to squelch this. And I just didn't even have a consciousness of it. And then when I got my license, I believe I was 18, I was driving in the car and I was thinking, you know what? I think I'm gay.
Congresswoman Musgrave, you wanted to respond to the mayor.
Well, I just wanted to say it's amazing to me that the mayor can defy the law and talk about it as though it were a noble thing. What if mayors around the nation just openly defied the law?
What? Are you kidding me? Do you not understand how our system of government works? Do you not understand what the Supreme Court is for? That is exactly what it's for. Of course he's doing that. He's fighting a legal battle. That's how legal battles work.
What kind of a country would we have?
The exact country we've had from the beginning, because that was the plan that was drawn up by the Founding Fathers.
Nation just openly defied the law. What kind of a country would we have? I believe when you're an elected official, you should have respect for the law. And the people of California have had a ballot initiative. The definition of marriage in California is a union between one man and one woman.
Mayor?
Well, Congresswoman, we are in the courts now discussing that point. We're discussing the constitutionality of that effort. The system works quite well. There's nothing to fear, Congresswoman. The fact is, when we took this action to uphold the Constitution of the state of California, where clearly, by the very nature of the fact that people feel that they need to amend the Constitution, we took appropriate acts to bear full faith and allegiance by the non-discriminatory nature of the language that we feel we're doing the right thing.
You certainly
Mr.
agree,
Mayor,
Mayor, though, they have the right to amend.
Well, they certainly, you have the right to amend. We've amended the Constitution 17 times since the Bill of Rights.
Right. And you wanted to say something? I want to move to our other panelists, but Marilyn, do you want to add something, Congresswoman?
Well, I was just going to say that it is very
So he said they've amended the Constitution 17 times since the Bill of Rights. That adds up to 27 constitutional amendments, because the Bill of Rights are 10, and then you have 17 more. And that adds up exactly to what we have now. I was trying to think to myself, were there fewer at the time? Were there more? No. He was talking about constitutional amendments beyond, like, the Bill of Rights. And, yeah, that's correct. They had amended up to 17 times past the Bill of Rights.
Say something? I want to move to our other panelists, but Marilyn, do you want to add something, Congresswoman?
Well, I was just going to say that it is very appropriate to have this legislation before us now, with the President putting his support behind the federal marriage amendment, and we will go through the legislative deliberative process. Has to have a supermajority in the House and the Senate, and 38 states have to ratify. This is
Yeah, it's really, really hard to get a constitutional amendment passed.
done in a respectful, lawful manner, unlike what you're doing in San Francisco.
Well,
All right, John, let me move other members of the panel. We have 4 members of the panel. I want to get everyone in. John, what do you say to those who say, what about Chad and his love of his life being together? Isn't that better than, say, the heterosexual marriage where one of the partners cheats?
Yeah, I mean, there are some really terrible marriages out there, some toxic straight marriages. That's a good point, Larry. Thank you. Thank you for that. I like Larry King.
Who is contributing more to the moral decay of the society? The adulterous husband with the female wife, or the loving gay couple who don't do that?
Yeah, well, you're asking me to do something I really can't do, and that is make a judgment on which sin is better or worse than the other. We've suffered in this country from adultery, divorce, the abuse of children, pedophilia, you name it. I'm not going to classify those in rank. They're sins, and they destroy the family.
And homosexuality is
and homosexuality,
a sin to you.
yeah.
Therefore, it's a choice.
It's a choice you make. It's a sinful choice.
Did you make a choice to be heterosexual?
I don't think I had to make a choice to be
Dude, I love it.
heterosexual. I think that's a natural thing.
Wait a minute. In other words, one is a choice and one is not.
Yeah.
So he was unlucky and you're lucky.
Because you're not talking about, because it's natural to be heterosexual. That's
what do you mean by natural?
Well, I mean, that's the way God made us.
Oh, I love it, dude.
That's
but
normal.
if he doesn't feel that way, what is he then? He's not a sinner. It wasn't his decision.
Yeah, I think it was his decision.
I would love, absolutely love for the pastor to point out for me when in my life I made that decision, because I have to tell you, it caused a lot of pain in my family.
Yeah, it's not a choice. It blows me away that people ever thought that. But once again, it was one of those propaganda tactics, one of the propagandistic framings that the far right used to attack the LGBT community. It's a choice that they're making, and they need to stop making that choice.
A lot of pain to me. It's a very, very tough thing that I had to go through. I don't remember making that decision. If I did, maybe you can point it out, but that wasn't the case for me.
I'll approach
it's
it
who I
another way.
am. You also said that it was in the fabric of the human being to understand that marriage was between a man and a woman, and that's what family was. It must not be, because it's not in the fabric of who I am.
Right, exactly. It's not. It's not actually in the fabric or whatever, the way he's saying. Evolutionarily, there is an explanation, a logical explanation for the existence of the LGBT community. And that explanation is there were children who have been abandoned by parents, or, you know, maybe the parents died or whatever. There were extra children that needed to be taken care of in ancient societies before a system of writing even existed. And people being gay corrected for that, created a scenario in which there are extra parents or extra people around who want to be parents but can't be parents. And evolutionarily, it didn't involve destroying somebody's reproduction abilities. So evolution, natural selection, kind of created extra parents to be around for spare children who had lost their parents without having to affect sexual ability in the population at all. That's basically why gay people exist evolutionarily. That's why it evolved in the first place.
The way I see it. I think families come in all shapes, sizes, and colors.
Well, let me respond this way, Chad, and say it had to be in the fabric of humanity, or you wouldn't be here.
I believe that reproduction is. I'll give you that. I absolutely believe that reproduction is. However, I think family, the definition of family and the definition of reproduction are very, very different things.
What I said earlier is the DNA, the genetic structure of humanity, of civilization, of society, is family. Everybody knows that. That's in the heart. That's how it works. You're coming along with others who are homosexual in their perspective and overturning what is natural to everyone.
Could they also be asking to the privilege of something you have preached for years? Marriage is a healthy, wonderful thing, and they're saying, let us in bargain. Why would you deny it to them?
Let me respond to Chad, too, just on a personal basis, Chad, by saying...
Oh, here we go. Personal basis, okay? This guy fucking hates the LGBT community and has for his entire career. You should have heard some of the shit that he said in the 60s about gay people. He does not like gay people. Trust me on that one. So let's hear him on a personal basis. Let's hear what he has to say to Chad on a personal basis. Okay, go on.
I don't think at some point you said, okay, I'm going to be a homosexual. I got two alternatives, you know, I'm going to go...
Well, that's what you just said. You said it's not a choice, so you do believe that.
...be a homosexual. But I do think whatever sin patterns show up in our lives, and they may be different for us, we can choose to continue down those paths of sin, whether it's adultery or whatever it is, or we can say, look, this is sin, and I need to deal with this in my heart. If this is the way I'm being led, it's not right, it doesn't honor God, it's not according to His Word, it's not going to ultimately bring blessing on my life. I make the choice at that point. I can't make a choice to be a sinner, okay? I am. We all are. But once you start down the path of sin, if you recognize that it is that, then you look to the Lord for the remedy to that.
And I
Absurd, dude.
respect you beyond anything for your belief on that. I really do. And let me tell you where the sin was in my life as I see it. When I was in high school and kids were getting picked on, and I was one of those kids picking on other kids, the ones that couldn't help but show that they were gay, the effeminate boys, and I picked on them, and I beat them up. That was a sin for me. The sin for me was hiding who I was. When it was dark inside my life and I was hiding who I was and trying to be something else, that was the sin for me. I believe that it's God who's called me to open up and start talking.
Congresswoman Musgrave.
Wow, that's actually really touching what this guy just said. He picked on gay kids in high school because he was hiding who he really was. You know, when I was in high school, I never had a problem with the gay community at all. Like, I never cared. In fact, I would defend gay people regularly. But I was a shithead generally in high school. I made fun of people generally in high school, and I don't know why I did that stupid shit. I was just a shithead. And, I've changed to be a better person than I was before, and I feel that's what's important, really. But the point I'm trying to get to so laboriously here is I used to make jokes about being gay and stuff too. And some dude told the principal that I was making jokes about it. And the principal called me in and shredded me. He's like, "What are you thinking? Why are you doing this? Leave people alone. Let them live their lives. Let them do what they want to do. Why do you care if he's gay or straight or what?" To my knowledge, he was straight. I was just making fun of him for something that he was wearing. And that kind of snapped me out of it and made me realize, yeah, you're exactly right. Why do I care? Why am I making jokes about this? This doesn't add up logically. This doesn't make any sense. There is no reason for me to do this, to be angry about this, or to joke about it, or laugh about it, or whatever. There is no reason for any of this. And I never made another joke about it again for the rest of my life. Like I said, I didn't have a problem with gay people. I was unique as a Jehovah's Witness in that fact. Jehovah's Witnesses did have a problem with gay people. Getting shredded by the principal that way really made a difference. It made me see things completely differently, so kind of interesting, how valuable. You never know which interaction you have with somebody is going to change everything about the way that they view the world.
Do you favor civil union?
I do not support civil unions. However, the language, the intent of my amendment reigns in the federal judges and the state judges, so you could not have state courts imposing civil unions, but it's respectful of legislatures that would choose to do that.
So in other words, if a state, if Colorado wanted that, it could do that legislatively?
It could do that legislatively. I'd fight the good fight in Colorado to oppose it. Quite frankly.
Fight the good fight to oppose it. Why? Why do you want to oppose it? I don't understand. What is your hang up with this? Why do you give a shit what people do with their lives, honestly?
But this is respective of a legislature's ability to do just that.
What rights do you want gay couples to have?
The rights that they have right now, all the rights that the rest of us enjoy.
Like you can sign off on your partner's pulling the plug if he wanted to die?
Contractual agreements, those things can be taken care of in the state of Colorado.
Not necessarily, no. There are some things you simply cannot do that marriage provides and offers that you can't get any other way. So just made up what she's saying here. She's trying to find some reason why she's not the bad guy in this situation, truthfully.
In regard to inheritance rights, you can write a will on a cocktail napkin and it's valid. So those things can be taken care of. If the legislatures want to deal with those in more detail, they certainly can do that in regard to benefits and contractual agements under the language of the FMA.
Not necessarily. Like, everything that she's saying here is iffy and questionable, not guaranteed.
Now, if the mayor respond to that, we'll be going to your calls at the bottom of the hour, and we'll do that right after these words. So it's not important that marriage be legal.
Marriage, well, because I'm not that connected to any organized religion, the idea of marriage isn't interesting to me.
Well, I don't care if you're connected to organized religion or not. It's still deeply valuable for people to have the ability to get married. If they have the ability to get married, it comes along with a ton of rights and privileges and all kinds, like tax benefits and everything. Marriage, access to marriage is important.
But being civilly married, or whatever you'd call it, having a civil agreement that gave us the rights of a married couple, I think is very important. A partnership.
Yeah, no second-class citizenship. I'm sorry. None.
If the amendment provides for partnership and civil union, which I believe is the appropriate way to extend rights, that would be a good amendment, I think.
Wow, that's really interesting. So John Kerry, if you don't know him, he negotiated the Iran deal, the Iran nuclear deal. And I think he's Secretary of State for a long time. I think he ran against Bush in 2004, 2005, and he was an extremely intelligent person. He's boring as sin as a human being, but he is about as intelligent as it gets. He knows what he's doing, and he knows government like the back of his hand.
If the amendment provides for partnership and civil union, which I believe is the appropriate way to extend rights.
So he doesn't believe in gay marriage, is what he's saying. I believe in civil union, not gay marriage.
That would be a good amendment. I think that you need to have civil union. That's my position.
I do not support, I am against the president's constitutional amendment on gay marriage. I don't personally support gay marriage myself, but my position has always been that it's for the states to decide, and it's for the state of Georgia to decide, or any other state to decide. And I think the federal government should honor those decisions.
Wow, states' rights guy over here. Okay. Well, there are some things that shouldn't be left up to the states, like people's human rights. You know, states should not be allowed to decide if they allow a black person to marry a white person. They should just allow that, period. States shouldn't be able to decide if they are allowed to if they're allowed to discriminate against gay couples like that.
Mayor Newsom, what's wrong with what Congresswoman Musgrave had to say?
Well, she didn't say what either presidential candidate said. She said separate but unequal. At least there's an argument being made by the presidential candidates that the 1,000+ benefits afforded opposite gender couples, married couples, can at least be considered as an extended benefit with civil unions. The bottom line is visitation, the rights of pension benefits, health care benefits, inheritance rights are not afforded opposite gender couples, or afforded opposite gender couples, but not same-sex couples. So
absolutely, he's correct here. Inheritance rights and everything. There are a lot of legal battles that happen in inheritance cases. You know, if there's a gay couple that lives together for 30 years and an estranged parent who treated those people like shit because they were gay, when that person dies, all of their money goes to the estranged parent who treated them like shit rather than the partner of the person. I mean, there is a legal battle to be had here. Maybe the partner could get some of their assets that they shared, that they built up together, maybe. But it's up in the air. With a married couple, that money, those assets, all that stuff would go to the partner. Unless there was like a specific will outlined. And even then, you can write a will, and that will may not even be respected by the state. If you don't give your family members a fair amount, or what the state views as a fair amount of your assets or your money or whatever, the state might just decide that they're going to award it to them anyways in a court. So marriage, just for inheritance rights alone, is so important.
To say that's not discriminatory to me is abjectly remarkable, when in fact it is discriminatory, and she's preaching at least a separate but unequal standard, and it's just simply not the world that I represent out here in
Are you
going
to have polygamy day? Are you?
That's a good point. Why not allow polygamy? But she's doing a slippery slope thing right now. If you allow gay people to get married, then you have to allow cats and dogs to get married. It'll be anarchy. That's the idea. Honestly, what's wrong with polygamy? Allow it. It's a legal contract.
Going to have a polygamy day? Are you going to have a group marriage day?
Yeah.
How far is this going to go, Mr. Mayor? I'd just like to know how far you're going to go in defying the law. And please answer that. Is polygamy okay?
It's, you know, it's the typical red herring, and it's almost stale rhetoric. It's the same rhetoric to get off the fundamental, the right of two people to come together. Yeah.
If you blur the lines of the definition of marriage, Mr. Mayor, how far do you go? I'm really interested. Do you support polygamy?
I don't.
I do. Why not? Let them sign the legal contract together. Now, it was not politically advantageous or politically popular to be pro-gay marriage at this point in time, and it certainly was not politically advantageous or popular to be pro-polygamy at this time. Absolutely not in any way, shape, or form. So I think Gavin Newsom is going to deny, polygamy or deny supporting it or whatever, but he's going to stand behind his gay marriage claims, I think.
Do you support polygamy?
I don't support discrimination, and I feel I have an obligation to protect and preserve the people of San Francisco, because it's a red herring and it's stale, divisive rhetoric.
If you think it's discrimination, do you support polygamy? How about group marriage? I'd like an answer.
I support two people in a loving, respectful way coming together and getting the same rights, privileges, and obligation I do. As
Mayor, you support that marriage should involve two people.
Absolutely, but I guess what it is, it's becoming almost cliche that the cultural conservatives throw out polygamy and all these other red herrings. Let's get back to the core issue. It's okay from your perspective to discriminate against two loving people that want to enter in a monogamous
Possibly you're discriminating against people who believe in polygamy.
Yeah.
Maybe people who believe in group marriage.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument for that. I think I can see that. Sure.
When you redefine marriage, how far are you going to go, Mr. Mayor? Do you get to make that decision?
We're talking about affirming the marriages of people like Phyllis Martin, or Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon have been together 5 decades in a loving, committed, monogamous relationship. We're talking about affirming marriages in ways that extend the same rights and privileges and obligations. It's not something to be so concerned about.
All right, Joe.
I think it was intelligent for him to not go down not follow the polygamy red herring. Like I said, he may have at the time supported polygamy. I support polygamy. Like, why do I care how many people get married? Whatever. But it was intelligent of him to not take the bait on that, I think. That would have been politically disadvantageous, very disadvantageous.
Not something to be so, I think, worried about.
John, how about here are two people that want they want a family. They want to be a gay couple. They want what you have. You have with your wife. They're asking for that. They want to promise fidelity. They want to promise to love, honor, and obey. Why not let them do that?
Well, they may want a family, but they can't have one.
No, but what?
Well, why not?
They can adopt.
Well, they can't have one in the way that God designed it. They can't.
Okay. Wow, that's really fascinating. So adoption, I guess, is not the way God designed it, and it's wrong, and you shouldn't do things that way? Is that what he's saying?
Have one. I mean, they can borrow somebody else's children.
The state and God are not the same. The state. What does the state care?
Well, I think because the state has a responsibility to uphold the right. Even the Bible says that the government exists to protect the people from what is evil. Well, I'm just saying, what does the state do? It protects us, right?
It protects our rights.
It protects us from what destroys. We enter into the...
No, it protects our rights.
to the abortion debate. The state makes laws about abortion. Why? Because it wants to protect what is valuable to our society, and that is the reproduction process. This goes upstream in some sense, Larry.
Okay, I don't have any idea what he's talking about. That makes no sense to me. The state makes laws about abortion because it protects or whatever. Like, what? What are you talking about?
Past the point of conception to a point where there can't even be conception.
But don't you feel compassion for the fact that Chad wants only one thing, same thing you have?
You know,
what's wrong with that?
Because
he's making it personal, and that's really hard to deal with when you make it personal like that.
Because it's a wrong relationship. It's a sinful relationship. It's an unnatural relationship. It's a relationship that obviously common sense tells you can't produce children and care for children in the way that
that's the only
humanity's
reason.
Wait, what is it? You can't care for children the same way? What are you talking about? Gay people can't care for children the same way that, like, straight people do? Do you have any evidence of that? Of course he doesn't. He's an evangelical extremist, and his main goal is convincing people to be opposed to gay marriage. That's it. That's the only thing on this guy's mind. Disgusting.
There's more to say than that. You got to look beyond them. You got to look to the future. You have to look to the kids, the children. Law establishes value.
Oh my God. They always fall back on the children. Protect the children. When they're losing a debate, talking the political right, evangelicals, they always fall back on protect the children. We must protect the children. You hearing this? Ridiculous.
Future. You have to look to the kids, the children. Law establishes values. Values are taught to children. They determine how children think in the future.
I have 4 friends, married couples, gay couples, raising children, doing a very, very good job of teaching their children and raising their children in beautiful, loving families.
Chad, why do you want what the society doesn't want to give you?
Because we shouldn't live in a society with second-class citizens, plain and simple. Doesn't matter if you got any benefits from it or not. You do get benefits from marriage, but it's irrelevant. No second-class citizens. He was absolutely right.
Good question. I'll tell you why. Because my parents showed me what love was like. They showed me what marriage was like. They showed me what 2 people could build together, grow old together, be happy together, take care of each other, plan for their future, plan for their deaths, plan to take care of each other if they're in the hospital. I've seen friends do the same thing. I stood up next to my brother when he got married and in front of the church, in front of our family, said how much he loved his wife and wanted to do together. And for the first time in my life, again, I'm in love. And I started thinking, I want that too. I can do it too. And the bottom line is, whether or not ultimately I or any of my buddies want to get married is besides the point. There exists this institution, which we've attached legal ramifications to, special rights to, that you're telling me that I can't have.
Absolutely. Second-class citizen.
That's not fair. That's not right. It's not what our country stands for.
We'll take a break and be back. We'll start to include your phone calls. I'll reintroduce the panel as well. Don't go away.
But there are certain positions that I hold. I'm not for legalizing marriages, because to me that's a covenant between a man and a woman and God. And I wasn't for the Equalization Act that happened in New Jersey, where the children who are up for adoption as newborns could be given equally to a gay or lesbian couple or a heterosexual couple.
Wow. So not only does she not want gay marriage, but she doesn't want gay people to be able to adopt, even, apparently.
I believe very strongly in domestic partnership rights. I was all for that throughout my campaign. I spoke out for it. But at the same time, we have also a law that says that we do not accept same-sex marriages, which was passed by the people, Proposition 22. And so that is the law. So we cannot have all of a sudden now mayors go and hand out licenses for various different things.
Wow, that's really interesting. So Arnold Schwarzenegger is famously Republican, but also to the left of a lot of, extremist Republicans. I find that super fascinating that he took the position back then that, you should be able to marry, but he was basically for civil unions, but he was not for gay marriage. That's kind of disappointing. What can you do? I mean, he's a fantastic dude now. I don't even know why he's a Republican. He shouldn't be.